Okay, I'm going to pick up where we left off after we finished making our template from the last demonstration. And when I say template, I don't mean it in sort of a general sense of a template as an Illustrator file. What I mean is where we had save as template, where it's literally an Adobe Illustrator template file type, an AIT file. All right, so what I'd shown you how to do is how to make that template, and then you can go File, New from Template, and then you would select the template that you had created, and then you would it would make a new one, and then you would save it, and so on. So anyway, this is where we're picking up where we left off for the point demonstration. So I'm going to show you how you can start to draw, use the drawing tools to create the objects that you'll need for this study, and how you can organize your layers and stuff like that. First thing I want to do is I want to come over here and I want to show you this layer right here. I'm going to rename this layer. I'm going to call it Artboard 1 by double clicking right there. Okay, and so now I've got this named layer. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to come over here to my tool panel. I'm going to just redock it because I can. And I'm going to click on the Ellipse tool right here. And if that's not visible, it should be if you reset your workspace. But if for any reason it's not, you can click and hold it and you can find the Ellipse tool. This is where a lot of the other shape tools are. And so anything that's got a little arrow down here in the bottom right corner, if you click and hold it, it means it has hidden menus underneath it that you can switch back and forth from. I'm not going to go through, I'm not going to go through all of this stuff. I just want to go through what we need to go through so that you can make this template for your assignment. So anyway, click on the Ellipse tool, and what I want to show you how to do if you've never drawn a vector object before is, and I'm going to show you something first of all, and then I'm going to undo it, and then I'll show you how to do it again. But you're going to click and hold the mouse down, and then before you start dragging, hold the Option key and the Shift key while you're clicking and dragging. And what that will do is it will, you see the line, it's going to allow you to draw an object, and it's going to allow you to draw it from its center point. The Option or Alt on Windows, it's called the Alt key. On a Mac, it's Option. The Option or Alt key is what is allowing it to draw from the center. If I were to lift up off of the Option Alt key but continue to hold Shift down, you see that it wants to draw from its corner registration access point. All right, and so if you want to draw from the center, which I usually like to do, I just keep that Option key held down. Okay, now the Shift key, what that's doing is it's constraining the proportion, right, so that I don't get a weird ellipse shape. If I hold down Shift while I'm doing it, it's going to make it the same in both directions. So anyway, now the trick is to draw the object, I need to let off my mouse before I let off those keys, and then I get my object. Okay, well the problem now is that this object doesn't have a solid color in it. So there's some different ways that you could approach this. First of all, I'm going to take my black selection tool up here, and I'm making sure that that thing is selected. If you come down in the tool panel where you see the foreground and stroke colors, I'm going to click this little double-headed arrow right here, and it's going to swap the stroke and the fill. Now, it might seem like it's okay, but I actually don't want the stroke right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this white, and I'm going to, while it's in the front, all right, so the fill color right now, see how it's overlapping the stroke? Well, if you click on the stroke, it'll overlap the fill so that it's the one that's selected. And then you're going to click on this none, or the strike through, that is basically assigning transparency to it. Okay, so now that I did that, there is no stroke on it. Now, something else that you could have done, okay, I'm going to just click somewhere else and it deselects the object. Now if I click the object again, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Now you see, if I had pre-selected down here my fill color and my stroke as a transparency, then next object that I go to draw, if I click on that ellipse again, and I do the shift, you know, the option and dragging and all that, right? So I did click, shift, option, drag. All right, it's going to automatically draw the next object with these settings in mind, okay? Now, the next thing I want you to do, because I want you to use these things in a sort of specific size, okay? I want you to go up here. Uh, it's always good, I think, whenever you're not using like a shape tool or something, to just go ahead and click on the selection tool, this black arrow, not the white one, but the black one. We're not getting into the white tool yet. Okay, so the black tool, selection tool, is nice because then if you accidentally click something, it's not going to try to make a new object for you and pop up some dialog window. But anyway, while this object is still selected, what I'd like for you to go up here and do is, if you look up here, there is an options panel. That's what this thing is. If I drag it open, you can see that it's another thing that I can undock. But the reason I'm moving it around is because I want to show you that this is really useful. It really is useful because it's contextualized based on the tool that you've got selected. So for instance, if I go over here and I select the text tool, you see that some of the options, well, it's actually changing. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, see, some of the options are actually changing. Okay, so let's go back to the black selection tool. I'm going to redock this. Let's see if I can get it to behave. Oh, there we go. Okay, now one of the things that you should notice here is that my black selection tool is chosen in the tool panel, but this black object, this circle that's on my screen, it doesn't have the blue outline around it, or whatever color it happens to be on your computer. I need to click that object if I want to effectively do something to it. I need to actually select it. All right, so if I just click on it, I will select it. Another way that you can select it is if I were to click out here and drag it with my black selection tool, then it will grab it. If I grab any part of that object, see if I just grab the little corner of it. In fact, let me zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing better. Okay. All right, just the little corner of it. I barely touched the edge of the object, but it was enough that it selected it. Now, see how it's showing this square bounding box? If I just do out here, it's not selecting it. It's just showing a square bounding box, not because it's actually square, but because it's just showing you in a square dimension all of the edges of the object in a rectangular or square, but in a rectangular fashion. Okay. All right, now to show you all of the dimensions that it's taking. Okay, so now that I have that selected, I want to come up here in my contextual options panel, and I want to click on this transform button, the little word, okay? And I want to change the size where it says width. I want to make sure that I change the size of this. Let's do it as 0.85, and then I'll hit the enter key, and it changed. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention, let's go back to transform, is see this little link right here? It's a chain link. That is going to constrain the width and height proportions. If you had that turned off with a little strike through, then if you changed one in one direction, let's say that you did 3 by accident and hit return, see, it turns it into a distorted ellipse. I'm going to hit Control or Command Z and undo that. Okay, I'm going to go back to transform, and I want to make sure that I turn my constraint back on, just so that it's there in the future. Okay, so the reason I ask you to make that 0.5 is because it's the appropriate scale for what I want to have you do in your study. All right, so I can now click and drag this, move it wherever I want. Okay, now the thing is I need to duplicate this so that I have a total of 5 of these shapes in this square. Okay, so to do that, what I'm going to do is click and hold. So right now I'm clicking with my mouse and I'm holding, and then I want to hold down the Option key or Alt key on Windows and just drag it somewhere else. And what that does, see, I've got the little double-headed arrow there. It's going to duplicate. All right, that's referred to as duplicating an object. So if I click and hold an object and then I hold down the Option key while I drag it somewhere, then it's going to duplicate it. You might be wondering, like, wait a second, a minute ago I clicked and held the the mouse and I held down Option and it drew a circle for me, right? Well, that's because I'm using a different tool. Before when I told you that, I had been using this Ellipse tool, and when I had the Ellipse tool chosen and I started clicking, holding, and then doing Option Shift, it was drawing the object. This tool, the selection tool, is just selecting the actual object that's there, and then whenever I hold down the mouse and then Option and drag, it will duplicate that object. Now here's the other thing that's kind of cool. I can duplicate multiple objects at once. So if I click and drag like that, I've now selected both of these objects. And so while both of these are selected, I can click and I can hold Option down and I can just move them wherever just to create a new set here. And then I'm going to just deselect by clicking somewhere else. And then I need to create one more because I want a total of 5. I need to click, hold, Option, drag, okay? And so now I've got 5 circles, and the arrangement right now does not matter. All right, I'm going to zoom back out, and I'm on a Mac with a trackpad, and so I'm doing a pinching action on my computer to zoom out, but you can also click down here, down at the bottom of the screen, and you can choose the zoom ratio that you want, or you can use this little magnifying tool and you can, click. All right, and then if you hold down the Option Alt key, you see it turns to a minus symbol, so you'll zoom out. Okay, and then if you want to move something around, you can grab this hand and you can move things around, the artboards around on the pasteboard. Actually, you're just moving the pasteboard around. Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to go back to the black tool. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that over here in the layers panel where I've got artboard 1, you see I've got 5 little pictures in my thumbnail. And then I have this little arrow. If I click it, you see what it says. It says ellipse, 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 ellipse. Okay. Now, the thing about that, you can just leave that if you want, but just so you know, what you could do is you could rename them. You could say, let's just call it, circle 1. Yeah, circle 1. And I'm just going to double click that and I'm going to copy that into my clipboard with a shortcut keyboard command, either Control C on a Windows or Command C on a Mac. And then I'm going to come down here. Oh, it didn't let me. Let's do that again. There, I had to hit the Enter key to commit to it. So now if I double click this one, I can paste, but I'm going to change that to circle 2 and paste, and I'll change that to circle 3. And this is not critical that you do this, but I just want to show you one of the ways that you can kind of do this as a best practice, so that I can tell you right now, when you start doing stuff and you've got lots and lots of drawing shapes and they're all called ellipse or square or rectangle or line or whatever, or segment or path, it is confusing. And the little thumbnails are a lot of times not very helpful. So one of the ways, if you ever need to figure out which one of the things that you need to isolate, like you can't tell which one it is, right now it's pretty simple. But one of the things that you can do is you can lock, right here, you can lock all the objects, and then you can select like that, and you can just see which one gets selected. If everything else is locked, you can't do anything with it. So I know that that one is circle 5, okay? And so on and so on. I don't really care. I'm just going to turn the locks off, and then now you see if I drag and select, I can select all of them. So what I want to show you though is, while this layers panel is open, I want to show you how you can group something. Now, you can either do a command on your keyboard. It's either Control G on Windows or Command G on a Mac, or you can go up to Object, and where it says Group, you're going to choose Group, and then you see it shows you what the shortcut is out here next to it. So you're going to go to Object because it's related to the objects on the page, and then you're going to click on Group. And notice what happens over here in layers is that it created a new group. Okay. Now the reason I did that, just so you know, okay, the reason I did that is because I'm going to do something in a minute that will help me with my productivity in terms of putting stuff on all of my artboards at one time. Okay, So I'm going to just call this circles. Okay. And you could even call it like 5 circles. Let's do that. Let's call it 5 circles. Okay. That's one option. You can call it whatever you want. So now I've got this group, and so I'm going to have, and now whenever I deselect, now that they're grouped, if I click anywhere on any single one of those objects, it selects the entire group of objects. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to copy that into my clipboard. Shortcut is Command C, or Windows it's Control C. The other thing you can do is go up here to Edit and Copy. All right. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to go up here to Edit, and where it says Paste on all artboards, automatically, look what it did. It pasted it on all of the artboards. Now, one of the things that you'll notice though that it did do is that it put it's all in a layer called Artboard 1. Okay. Now, you could just go and rename the different groups, and that would be okay. But the problem that I have with that is that it means that you have to have, you know, the parent layer open like this, and then it takes up all this extra room and stuff. So what I've done in the past is I'll just leave, you know, one set of these things inside of my first artboard, but then I'm going to move them outside of it, and I'll show you what that's going to look like in a second. But the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I know which one of these things is which before I start moving them around and calling them artboard 1, 2, 3, whatever. Okay, so the easiest way to do it is just to turn the eyeballs on and off. You can see, oh, that's the one that would be artboard 6. All right, so we'll just call this, see, I didn't have to name it 5 circles. Let's just call this, I'll call it A6 for artboard 6. All right, and then I'm assuming it just goes in the reverse order. Yes, it does. Okay. All right, so that's how I can count on it. Oh, and by the way, let me show you how you can know which artboard is which. All right, if you take over here in the tool panel, there's this little thing. It almost looks like a crop tool, but it's the artboard tool. If you click on this, it shows you all the artboards, and then if you select different artboards, it allows you to, it would actually allow you to move them closer together and stuff like that. I'm going to undo that. So if you really, really hate them being this far apart, you know, you can move them closer together and then later move them apart. But anyway, you could just do it this way for right now. That's one option. And then there's also this artboards panel. And so you can reorder them and rename them and stuff like that here too. Anyway, so you can see that it goes 1, 2, 3, from left to right, and then it wraps in 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to go back to my black selection tool, and I'm just going to rename by double clicking over here because I know which artboard is which now. I'll call it A4, A3, and I can't stress enough, wait, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Something's going on where it duplicated it. Okay, you might say, why do I have 7 of these things? Well, because whenever we originally selected the very first one and we copied it and then we pasted it on all artboards, that also means that it duplicated it on the first artboard. So now we have 7 different copies. So in theory, if I hit this visibility button, it's going to look like it doesn't disappear, right? See how I'm clicking that and nothing's disappearing? That's because, let's make that go away, that's because this one is the original one that was right underneath it. So to keep things really easy and straight, I'm going to take this group and I'm going to drag it and put it in this little trash can icon, and it gets rid of it. So now that I've just made my life a little bit easier. Now, what used to be really cool back in the day is with Illustrator, you used to just be able to drag a group outside and create a new layer, but you can't do that anymore. They don't let you do that. So what you need to do now is, I'm just going to collapse that just for efficiency. And I'm going to create some new artboards right here where it's got the little new page icon. I'm not dragging this to it. I'm just creating it, okay? And then I'm going to rename it. We'll call it Artboard. Let's call it 2. And the other thing too, so that I don't have to do this over and over again, is I'm just going to copy where it says artboard space, copy that. And then I'm just going to create some new artboards. Artboard 3, 4, 5, and the last one is 6. Okay. Now, you might not like them in this order. I don't really care if my first artboard's on the bottom or on the top. It honestly doesn't matter to me. But now what you can do, now that you've got all these new artboards, is that you can open this up, and like I can take this group that is right now underneath artboard 1, and I can drag the group and drop it inside of artboard 6 like that while it's highlighted, and you see it goes into artboard 6. Okay, and I'm going to do that for each one of these. Okay, I'll drag that into 3, into 2. Okay, and now you can see that I've got discrete, distinct stuff in my different artboards. Okay, I really, really, really recommend that you do this to keep your stuff straight throughout the entire semester. It's going to be really helpful, especially when you have stuff that looks the same. Now, there's some different ways to go about this. You could just keep these things in groups if you want, like A1 or whatever. That's fine. For some of you guys, that might be really annoying and to have to go into these subcategories. So one of the things that you could do if you really wanted, I just needed groups so that it would be really simple to organize them in order to duplicate them. But now I don't really need them. So if you wanted to click the circle 1 and then holding down Shift, click all the way down to 5 and it selects all of them. And then I can click and drag and I can just drop that inside of artboard 1 and it takes it out of the group. So they're no longer grouped anymore. And actually that's what I want you to do, because you need to be able to individually manipulate these circles. You can't just move the whole group everywhere, right? So you need to actually ungroup them. Now you could do it that way. That's one option. Another way is that if I were to, for instance, select this group, the other thing that I could do is I can go up to here and say Object, Ungroup, and then if you look here it says that it's the Shift Command G, or on Windows it would be Control symbol. But so, all right, and then it automatically did it for you, so you don't have to drag stuff around. Okay, so that's really up to you how you would like to do that. I'm going to kind of close this up a little bit. I'll select this and I'll do Shift Command G for ungroup, and you can take a look and see, yeah, it did ungroup it. If you want to see it live, you can keep this open, and I'll click on this and I'll do Shift Command G. It ungrouped it. You can see it happening in the panel. Let's just keep both of those open. Shift Command G. I'll click on this one, Shift Command G. The other thing that you'll notice that's kind of nice is that, see how each layer has color coding and it shows you in the layer panel. Like right now in Artboard 6, I've got my Artboard 6 layer and it's got this sort of magenta pink color. And when I select something, it's this magenta pink color. All right, if I'm in Artboard 5 and I select something, it's yellow. Okay, so you can see that it's nice that it does this color coding. All right, so now you've got your basic template for all of the points with identical sizes, and here's the thing, you are not allowed to change the actual size of these objects. You can take them and you can, you know, move them around as you wish to kind of like try to create some sort of, you know, some sort of design or whatever to try to, you know, help you figure out like what makes sense for, you know, your design. And you can kind of just move them around, manipulate them, and explore and do that kind of stuff. But you're not allowed to do that, for instance. That's a no-no. You're not allowed to change the scale at all. Well, at least not for this phase of the assignment. Okay, so now you've got something and you can continue with your assignment in exploration so that you're creating different compositions in each one of these artboards. And if this is an on-ground course that you're taking, make sure that you bring these to the next class. That's really important. You can either bring them on a thumb drive or you can upload them to the server, whatever you want. Okay, but you need to make sure you have them. If it's an online course, then you can just continue forward with the rest of the lessons.